The night air carried the familiar smell of warm asphalt, mixed with the last reminders of summer as Emily stepped out of her car and grabbed her bag. Just as she reached to close the door, she noticed a movement inside. 3 pairs of wide, glowing eyes met hers, fixed and unblinking. 3 little kittens were huddled together on the passenger seat, their fur a mass of tangles, their small bodies shaking slightly. Emily's heart skipped a beat. How had they ended up there? And where was their mother? She took a deep breath and grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed. "Jack, I need help. They won't leave." Inside, she felt a nagging sense that their reluctance to depart was about more than just fear. When I picked up Emily's call, I could sense her worry and confusion. After all, it's not typical for stray kittens to claim your car and refuse to budge. I quickly grabbed my keys and drove over, my mind flooded with questions. Had their mother abandoned them? Were they sick? Or was there more going on than met the eye? By the time I arrived at Emily's apartment, she was crouched beside the open car door, her eyes locked on the kittens as if they held some untold story. Milo, the bravest of the bunch, sat confidently on the seat, his little tail flicking with attitude. Luna pressed herself into a corner, her ears twitching nervously at every sound, torn between a desire to flee and the need to stay. And then there was Theo, the smallest of the 3, curled up between them, breathing lightly as if he were carrying the weight of the world. "They won't leave," Emily whispered as I approached. I tried to pick them up, but they just squirmed back inside. It's like they're waiting for something. I bent down to observe them more closely. Their fear seemed deeper than typical shyness. It felt as if something invisible was keeping them in that spot. I reached out, but Milo responded with a sharp meow of warning. That's when I noticed faint claw marks on the dashboard and a lingering scent that made my stomach twist. Clearly, something had occurred here, and we were about to uncover the truth. I exchanged a glance with Emily before reaching out again, more gently this time. Milo bristled, but didn't swipe at me. Instead, his little body tensed, his eyes darting between the dashboard and me. Their behavior felt intentional. They weren't merely frightened, they seemed to be protecting something. I turned to Emily. "Are you sure this is just your car? You didn't get it from someone else?" She frowned. "No, it was my dad's a few months back, but it's been mine since I moved in." I ran my hand over the seat, searching for anything unusual. The faint scent in the air, something wild and earthy, wasn't just from the kittens. There was something older tucked into the fabric. Then came a weak cry. Not from the 3 kittens, but from deeper within the car. Emily and I froze. Theo perked up, his frail body straining to stand. Luna let out a soft, urgent meow. Milo looked toward the dashboard, eyes fixed on something invisible. My chest tightened as I followed their gaze. It led toward the narrow gap beneath the glove compartment. It was barely big enough to fit a newborn. I reached out, my heart racing. My fingers brushed against something warm and alive. "Jack?" Emily whispered, her voice barely above a hush. Taking a deep breath, I gently pulled back, revealing a tiny, barely moving kitten in my palm. Its fur felt cold, and its breaths were uneven. It had been hidden there, forgotten and alone, until now. The little kitten hardly moved. Its small chest rose and fell in shallow, shaky breaths. It was smaller than the others, weak and fragile, a little survivor. I couldn't help but wonder, how long had it been trapped like this? How did it manage to hang on? Emily gasped. Oh my God, it was in the car the whole time. The 3 kittens shifted closer, pressing against my arm as if they were urging me to act. They weren't just hiding, they had been waiting for us to find their sibling. I cupped the fragile creature in my hands, feeling the cold seep through its thin fur. We need to warm it up, right now. Emily quickly scrambled inside the car, returning with a towel. I gently wrapped the kitten, rubbing its little body to restore some warmth. It let out a faint, raspy mewl, barely audible, but enough to tell us it was still fighting. Just then, Daniel's truck rolled into the driveway, and he hopped out, his expression shifting from confusion to concern when he saw my face. "What happened?" I exhaled sharply. "We just found this one trapped under the dashboard. It's barely breathing." His eyes shifted to the other kittens still nestled in the car. He shook his head. "That means the mother was in here too. If she was scared enough to hide them like this..." Something must have frightened her away. His words sent a chill through me. If their mother had left them, what could have driven her away? Emily crouched next to me, her fingers hovering over the tiny kitten wrapped in a towel. "Is it going to make it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure. Its breaths were weak, and its body felt cold. But I didn't want to voice my doubts. "We need to warm it up and give it some water. It still has a chance." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "This just doesn't seem right. A mother cat wouldn't leave her kittens like this." He glanced around the parking lot, his eyes darting into the shadows. Something must have happened. Emily bit her lip as she looked toward the car. "Do you think she's still close by? Maybe she got hurt?" I stood up and adjusted my grip on the kitten. "It's possible, but if she is alive, she might be too scared to come back or unable to do so." The weight of that thought hung in the air. Milo let out a soft meow from inside the car, peeking over the console. The other two stayed close, huddled together, as if they were still waiting. They didn't want to leave. They didn't feel safe. "Let's check the area," Daniel suggested with a sigh. "If she's nearby, we might be able to bring them together. If not..." He trailed off, but we all understood the implication. Emily squared her shoulders with determination. "Then we'll do whatever it takes to keep them alive." I nodded in agreement. "Let's uncover the truth of what happened." We began to search right away. Emily moved toward the front of the building, looking under parked cars and checking the bushes along the sidewalk. Daniel headed toward the alley, his flashlight sweeping over dumpsters and old wooden fences. I stayed close to the car, keeping an eye on the kittens for any signs of life, hoping for any hint that their mother might be near. Milo, Luna, and Theo were cuddled together on the seat, their ears perked up at the distant sounds of the city. But they weren't focused on the alley or the sidewalk. Their gaze was fixed on something in particular, the dark space beneath Emily's car. A chill ran down my spine. "Daniel, over here." He jogged over, and I knelt down, lowering the flashlight. The beam pierced the shadows, revealing something that took my breath away. Fur, matted and barely moving. A mother cat. She was trapped against the undercarriage, her body limp, one paw reaching out as if she'd tried to get to her kittens before giving in. "God," Daniel said quietly. "She's alive, but just barely." Emily let out a soft gasp as she knelt beside me. She must have hidden them in the car and then got hurt before she could come back for them. I reached out cautiously, feeling my heart race. If she was injured too severely, we might be running out of time. The kittens meowed anxiously, sensing their mother close by. We had to find a way to get her out quickly. I moved closer, trying to keep my hands steady despite my racing heart. The mother cat hardly moved, her shallow breaths the only indication that she was still alive. Her fur was matted with dirt, and as I touched her, I felt something sticky, blood. Emily's voice trembled. "She's hurt badly. What should we do?" Daniel took a deep breath. If we shift her incorrectly, it could worsen her condition. But leaving her here, he didn't need to complete the thought. She might not make it. Milo, Luna, and Theo were pressed against the car door, mewing desperately. They had been waiting for her all this time. I knew we couldn't let this end here. I took a deep breath. We don't have a choice. We have to get her out. After a moment of hesitation, Emily nodded. "I'll grab a blanket. We can wrap her in it." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking stressed. "Then what? Are we really keeping her? Are we sure she'll survive?" I glanced at the fragile body under the car, then at the kittens still waiting for her. There were no simple answers, but there was one thing I felt sure of. We'll do everything we can. I took a slow breath and slid my arms under the cat's fragile form. She barely stirred. Her weight felt alarmingly light. Her fur was damp and sticky, but I didn't stop to assess the injury. We needed to move her. Emily returned with a blanket, spreading it out on the pavement as I gently lifted the cat. Her ribs pressed against my fingers, her body limp except for a slight twitch of her tail. After I placed her down, Milo, Luna, and Theo rushed out of the car. They pressed against their mother, their tiny paws making almost no sound. She didn't respond, but they curled up beside her, yearning for warmth and comfort, any sign that she was still their mother. Daniel let out a sharp breath. "She needs to see a vet, right away." Emily nodded, but then paused. "What if she doesn't make it? What will happen to them?" I clenched my jaw, feeling the weight of the situation. We'll figure that out later. For now, she's still alive, and that's what matters. Daniel grabbed his keys. I'll call ahead. There's an emergency clinic a few miles away. As we carefully placed the blanket-wrapped cat into the car, a sudden gust of wind swept through the parking lot. The streetlights flickered, and I noticed how unusually quiet everything had become. Something felt off. Was this truly an accident, or was there more going on than we realized? Emily drove quickly but with caution, her hands firmly gripping the steering wheel. The emergency vet clinic was just a short distance away, yet every moment felt prolonged. In the back seat, I held the mother cat, feeling her shallow breaths against my hands. Milo, Luna, and Theo were in a small carrier that Emily had grabbed at the last minute. They were silent now, peering through the bars with worried expressions. Up front, Daniel was already on the phone with the clinic. Yes, she's in bad shape, possible internal injuries, maybe blood loss. We'll be there in 5 minutes. He nodded as he listened. Understood, we'll be there soon. Emily glanced at me in the rearview mirror. They'll be able to help her, right? I swallowed hard and looked down at the fragile cat in my lap. They'll do their best. When we arrived at the clinic, the staff was already outside with a stretcher. I carefully passed the mother cat into their hands and watched them hurry her inside. The kittens let out small, confused mews, pressing against the carrier door as if they could somehow follow her. Emily leaned against the car, letting out a sigh. I can't believe they were stuck in my car this whole time. If I hadn't seen them, Daniel shook his head, they wouldn't have survived in there. That was a sobering truth that neither of us wanted to dwell on. We had acted just in time, but the bigger question lingered. Why had their mother hidden them in the car to begin with? Inside the clinic, time seemed to stretch infinitely. The staff had taken the mother cat to the back, leaving us in the waiting room, feeling helpless. The only noise was the occasional scratch of tiny claws against the carrier door. Milo, Luna, and Theo huddled together, their wide eyes fixed on the direction their mother had been taken. They were more than anxious. They were waiting for her, believing she would return, unaware of the uncertainty we all felt. Emily sat beside me, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She has to make it, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. They've been waiting for her this whole time. Her voice trembled with emotion, and I couldn't help but agree. The kittens hadn't moved from that car because they were holding on to the hope that their mother would return. Now, their future depended on whether she could survive through the night. Daniel came back from the front desk, rubbing his face in frustration. They're doing what they can to stabilize her, but it's serious. She's lost a lot of blood, and she's dehydrated and exhausted. She must have been out there for days before we got to her. They'll try their hardest, but he didn't need to finish that thought. We all felt the weight of it. Emily took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the floor. And if she doesn't make it? Silence hung in the air. If she didn't pull through, those kittens would be left alone. We could feed them and keep them warm, but nothing could replace the love of their mother. They were too young to understand her absence, too small to know she might not be coming back. Just then, Milo let out a sharp, urgent cry that surprised us all. It wasn't just any meow. It was a desperate call, as if he was reaching out to her. We went quiet, holding our breath. Then, from beyond the treatment area, we heard a faint, broken response. Emily gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Hope sparked in her eyes. Daniel's gaze met mine, and for the first time that night, I noticed a glimmer of optimism in his expression. The mother cat was still fighting. But then we wondered, did she have enough strength to keep going? We sat still, hardly breathing, as the mother cat's weak cry faded behind the clinic doors. The kittens perked up, pressing against the bars of their carrier, their ears twitching at the sound of her voice. It was a flicker of hope after a long, tense night, but it didn't change the fact that we were still uncertain about her survival. Emily turned to me, her face tense. What if she pulls through? What do we do then? She pointed toward the carrier where Milo, Luna, and Theo were alert and ready. They can't go back outside after everything they've been through. Daniel sighed, leaning back in his chair. If she makes it, we'll need to see if she can care for them again. But if she doesn't, he shook his head. the weight of uncertainty clear in his eyes. Either way, we have 3 kittens who will need new homes. I looked at the small faces gazing up at us, completely unaware of the decision weighing on our shoulders. We hadn't planned for this. Emily didn't expect to find kittens in her car, Daniel didn't foresee a late-night rescue, and I certainly hadn't anticipated feeling so responsible for them. But when I saw them waiting in that car, refusing to leave because they were still hoping for their mother, everything changed. "We can't separate them just yet," I finally said, breaking the silence. "They need each other. If their mother recovers, we make sure she's strong enough to care for them. If she doesn't..." I took a deep breath, running my hand through my hair. "Then we do whatever it takes to keep them safe." Emily nodded slowly, processing the reality of the situation. "So, we're going to foster them?" Daniel chuckled. "That's what everyone says before they end up keeping them." I didn't respond. Maybe he was right. Deep down, I sensed that walking away from them wasn't really an option. Time seemed to stretch, each minute filled with uncertainty. The clinic was mostly quiet, except for the distant sounds of conversation from the front desk. But for us, the silence felt heavy. The kittens had settled in their carrier, but now and then Milo would let out a little chirp, as if still hoping to hear his mother respond. Emily sat with her knees hugged to her chest, absent-mindedly clutching her jeans. "I hate this part," she murmured. "Just sitting here, not knowing." Daniel leaned back and rubbed his face. It never gets easier. He was right. This part of rescue work was always about waiting and hoping we had done enough. Yet something about this particular situation felt different. Maybe it was how the kittens clung to the car, waiting for their mother, as if they were certain she would return. Perhaps it was the way Emily had stumbled upon them, as if fate had guided them into her path for a purpose. Or maybe it was the way they looked at me now, as if I held all the answers, when in truth, I had no idea. Suddenly, the door to the treatment room swung open, and we all sat up straight. A vet tech stepped out, clipboard in hand, her expression difficult to read. In that brief moment, my heart almost stopped. "She's stable," the tech said, and just as I started to feel relief wash over me, she added, "But there's something you need to know." The comforting feeling that was beginning to rise quickly vanished. I shared a glance with Emily, then turned to Daniel. "What's going on?" I asked, surprised at how strained my voice sounded. The vet tech paused before speaking. "We ran a quick scan, and she has a microchip." The moment those words left her lips, a new sense of uncertainty filled the room. This mother cat wasn't just any stray, she had an owner. For a brief moment, silence wrapped around us. The revelation altered everything. I hadn't considered that she might belong to someone. She had seemed like just another struggling stray, thin and weary, desperately clinging to survival. But now, the situation shifted from merely saving her and her kittens to pondering who cared for her and what that meant for them. Emily eventually broke the silence. "So she has a home?" Her voice was a mix of caution and hope, tinged with uncertainty. The vet tech considered her words carefully. "We don't have all the information yet. The chip is registered, but that doesn't necessarily mean someone is actively looking for her. Some pets go missing for years, and by the time they're found, their families have moved on. And sadly, sometimes people abandon pets, even if they have a chip." Daniel let out a slow breath, rubbing his temple in frustration. "So we're stuck waiting again?" The tech nodded slowly. "We've reached out to the registered owner. If they respond, we'll let you know. For now, she just needs some rest. You can check on her in the morning." As we stepped out of the clinic, the night felt colder, the air thick with tension. The streetlights flickered above, their glow casting fragile shadows over the pavement. The city seemed far away, muted under the weight of what we had just learned. We hadn't anticipated this twist. Just hours ago, our mission was clear: save the mother and help her kittens survive. Now, everything was more complicated. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, gazing at the ground. What if the owner wants her back? At first, I hesitated to respond. Not long ago, we had been strangers to these cats, but now handing them over to someone who might not care, or worse, someone who might have left them behind, felt wrong. Daniel noticed my expression and let out a scoff. "You're already too attached." Maybe I was. But as I looked at the tiny kittens nestled in their carrier, their little bodies pressed together for warmth, I realized I wasn't alone in that feeling. They were already part of our family. The main concern now was whether we would have to separate them. Sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, visions of 3 tiny kittens curled up on Emily's car seat filled my mind. They were waiting for something that would never arrive. I could picture their mother, still and lifeless beneath the car, her paw reaching out as if she had tried with all her might to get to them before it was too late. I could hear Milo's small voice echoing in the clinic, filled with longing, as his mother responded weakly but firmly. That instinct to hold on kept replaying in my mind. Eventually, I found myself wandering around long before dawn, checking my phone repeatedly. No updates came in. The uncertainty weighed heavily on me, more than before. We had done everything possible, rescued them, made sure they were safe, and brought them to this clinic. But now the final decision was in the hands of a stranger we had never met. Just after sunrise, I received Daniel's message. Heading to the clinic, no news yet. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door. When I arrived, Emily was already at the clinic, sitting in one of the plastic waiting room chairs, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold. The dark circles under her eyes made it clear she hadn't slept either. She looked up as I walked in. "Anything?" I shook my head. "Nothing." The room felt even colder than the night before. The air carried a mix of antiseptic and coffee, but it did little to ease the tension in my chest. We were no longer just waiting for a medical update. We were anxious to find out if all our efforts would be in vain. At that moment, the vet tech from last night appeared in the doorway. Her expression was hard to read, and she held her clipboard close. My stomach tightened. "The owner responded," she said, her tone steady. "He's coming in today." Those words hit me hard. I swallowed, but it did little to ease the weight in my stomach. The mother cat had a home, or at least she used to. Emily straightened in her chair, gripping her coffee cup tightly. "Did he say anything? Does he still want her?" The tech paused before replying. He sounded surprised, like he didn't even know she was missing. She glanced towards the back room where the cats were. "By the way, she's doing better. Still weak, but she's more responsive." The kittens seem calmer knowing she's close. I nodded, but my mind was racing. It surprised me. This was not how someone looks when they've been searching for a lost pet, someone who had spent long nights worrying about a beloved animal. Instead, it felt as if he hadn't even noticed she was gone. I felt my jaw clench. What happens next? The technician let out a heavy sigh. "Now we wait. We'll see if this man really wants to take her home or if he has already moved on." The waiting room felt increasingly cold, with an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air. I sat stiffly in my chair, my fingers intertwined, trying to push aside the growing anxiety in my chest. Emily hadn't touched her coffee since the tech left, staring blankly at the cup as if seeking answers that weren't there. Daniel stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the parking lot. We were all just waiting. It seemed like forever before the glass door finally swung open. An older man walked in, perhaps in his late 40s. He had a straight posture and an unreadable expression, dressed in a neatly tucked button-down shirt, suggesting he had just come from work. His gaze scanned the waiting room until it landed on the receptionist, and he approached the desk confidently. I observed him closely, hoping to see some hint of care or concern for the cat he claimed to have lost. But when he spoke, his tone was flat and emotionless. "I received a call about a cat. Says she was found?" Emily glanced at me, her lips pressed tightly together. I kept my focus on the man, feeling a knot tightening in my stomach. Something didn't feel right. The receptionist nodded and pointed to the back. "She's in recovery. The vet will be out shortly to talk to you." The man barely reacted at all. He sighed, adjusting his watch. "Okay, I guess I should handle that." He didn't ask about the cat's condition or if she had been hurt. My stomach twisted. This didn't seem like someone who had lost a beloved pet. He felt more like someone ticking an item off a to-do list. Daniel appeared to sense the same unease, shifting his stance as his arms crossed tighter. Emily's fingers clenched against her sweater sleeve. No one broke the silence, but the tension felt thick and suffocating. A few minutes later, the vet came out, holding a folder. She spoke quietly with the man, sharing details about the cat's situation, how thin she was, how she had been found hurt, and how her kittens were waiting for her. He listened, but it seemed like he wasn't really there, as if her words didn't matter much to him. Then came the moment I had been fearing. The vet looked directly at him, arms crossed. "Do you want to take her home?" There was a long pause. The man sighed, rubbed his chin, and then shrugged, saying something that made my heart sink. "Well, I haven't seen her in months. I thought she'd run away. She's probably better off where she is." Emily gasped beside me. Daniel let out a low scoff. I squeezed my hands so tightly that my nails pressed into my palms. Was that really all she meant to him? The vet nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "In that case, we'll make arrangements for her and her kittens." The man didn't argue. He didn't fight for her or even ask to see her. He simply mumbled something about needing to get back to work and walked out the door. As soon as it closed behind him, Emily released a shaky breath. Daniel shook his head, muttering, "Unbelievable." I felt a shift inside me. Maybe it was relief, perhaps anger, or maybe both. But as I stared at the door he had just exited, I realized that even though he had left, she had already found her true home. And we weren't going to let her go. The door had barely shut when the weight of everything settled on us. Emily exhaled deeply, rubbing her face as if trying to shake off the moments that had just passed. Daniel remained still, arms crossed, staring at the spot where the man had been, shaking his head in disbelief. At first I didn't feel much, no rush of victory or satisfaction, just a sinking sensation, as if the world had confirmed something I had suspected all along. The mother cat had never really been lost, she had been left behind. That realization hit harder than I anticipated. She had fought tirelessly to keep her kittens alive, protecting them even as her own strength faded. Meanwhile, the person who should have cared for her had already moved on. It was sickening. Yet at that moment, something else became clear. "She's not going anywhere," I said softly, finally breaking the silence. Emily raised her head, looking confused. "What do you mean?" I gestured towards the hallway leading to the recovery room, where the mother cat was resting. "She's coming to stay with us, all of them." Daniel shook his head with a quiet laugh. "I figured you'd say that." Emily's expression shifted, her eyes searching mine. "Are you sure? That seems like a lot." Without a moment's pause, I replied, "They don't have anywhere else to go, not after everything." We made our way back to the recovery room, where the mother cat lay wrapped in a soft blanket. Though she looked weak, her breathing was stronger now. As we approached, her eyes fluttered open, and the kittens started to stir in their carrier, their little heads popping up at the sound of her movement. I carefully set the carrier down and unlatched it. Milo was the first to jump out, racing towards his mother with a tiny, urgent chirp. Luna and Theo quickly followed, crowding around her as if afraid she might vanish again. But this time, she was safe. She wasn't leaving. Emily let out a soft laugh, tears beginning to brim in her eyes. They waited for her, and she waited for them. Daniel sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "So I guess we're fostering now?" I looked down at the small family nestled together, finally safe and together. Fostering seemed like the plan, but as I watched them interact, I felt as though they had already chosen us just as much as we had chosen them. And I was okay with that. Rescue is more than just saving lives. It's about providing animals the love and security they need, especially when the world has let them down. If you've ever thought about fostering or adopting, remember there are many animals out there waiting for someone like you to choose them. You could offer them a second chance. If this story touched you, please share it. Help raise awareness about the realities facing abandoned animals and the impact of second chances. And if you want to keep up with more rescue stories, consider subscribing, because every life saved has a story worth sharing.